Welcome, everyone. My name is Kanai Haneshi, and I am the Secretary General of Women's Sports International. And everyone, welcome to the Women's Sports International webinar, Power, Play, and Prevention, Rewriting the Rules Through Sports in Papua New Guinea. So today, before we go into the webinar session, it's just a quick housekeeping. I'm sure at this point, everyone is very used to use the Zooms and muting yourself and asking questions, yada, yada, yada. But please mute yourself during the session. But, Tahina, I think is planning this session as more like interactive session. So feel free to kind of be more interactive through that. And then, like I say, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. So we'd love to find out who's here and joining us in the webinar. And also, this webinar is recorded because of the time differences. Some parts of our community, WSI communities, especially European African communities, are like midnight. So we are recording this session to share this webinar to our community, WSI community around the world. So this is the agenda. So we are going to have a quick welcome from WSI. Director, Dr. Carol Grosby, and then I am going to introduce today's speaker. And then Tahina is going to take over. And then after, then we have a Q&A. And then at the end, I will talk a little bit about the Women's Sports International and why you should be joining us. So let's start with this welcome. So I am going to hand over to Dr. Carol Oglesby to say welcome, Carol.
I am so happy to be involved in this program. I was the person, I think, that had the good fortune to tumble across the path of Tahina Booth and realized that she was definitely a person that we needed to hear from and the people around the globe needed to hear from. And so I'm so happy here she is. It's happening today and will happen for a few days as the recording of the session goes around. Tahina has been very, very active in the region and probably well beyond the specifics of the region. I know that from a few conversations with her that she has big plans about this particular region and where it might go in the future. So I hope that some of the time of her talk today, she might touch on a little bit about the collaborations that she's working to build in the area. So Tahina, thank you so much for joining us today. We couldn't be happier and appreciate how early that you hit the airwaves this morning for you. And we're looking forward to everything that you have to say. Welcome to everyone who's joining us today as well. Thank you, Kanai.
Thank you very much, Carol. And now it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Tahina Booth. So she will talk all about what she does, but let me read about her profile because it's very little bit about her. She's gonna be a lot more than this. But anyway, Tahina Booth is a founder and the managing director of Grass Skirt Project, GSP, a Papua New Guinea-based initiative using sports to address gender-based violence, youth leadership, and health inequity. A former elite athlete who represented the both Papua New Guinea and Australia. She now leads programs such as 10 Million Strong, Gymbox, that's right, Gymbox, and Havana Cup and Wellness Expo. Tahina currently serves on the Pacific Women Leader Governance Board, has advised UNFPA, she can talk about all that, ADB and DFAT, and currently submitted a policy brief to the CEDAW committee and advocating for the inclusion of sports as a formal tool for gender equality in Pacific context. Her work has reached over 6,000 youth and aim to empower 1 million by 2050. So like I said, this is super brief and you're like, what is all going on? So if I catch your curiosity, I did my job. So anyway, it is my pleasure to hand this over to Tahina Booth.
Thank
Yay!
you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Kanai. Did I say your name right?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Beautiful. And thank you, Dr. Carol, for putting this webinar on, and I'm super duper, super duper excited to be calling and talking to you all. I'm calling from the lands of the Moitakoida people in Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea. And right now we've got the winds happening, the Lorabutta winds, the trade winds, it's essentially a bit of story now. These winds would carry the people from all the way from Hanulbutta down to my village, about a few 100 kilometers down, carrying their pots to trade with our people for, in exchange for buai or something like that. And then a few months later, when the winds change direction, they'll get back on their lugger toys and then sail back to their lands on which we're on right now. So you will hear some, oh, that was a door that just smashed, and some windows that might, bang a bit. But yeah, if you hear big gusts of winds, that's what it is at the moment. So yes.
It's a regular, like the Wizard of Oz. You've got a wizard going there.
Yes, yes. Now, I was thinking for this talk, that we make it probably a little bit more informal, and I'd like to just, basically just, start from the beginning of who I am, and then move into the work that I'm doing, and we'll just let it evolve from there like a good story. How's that?
Perfect.
Amazing. Thank you. And if anyone has any questions or anything like that, please put it into the chat. And I'm sure between us three very capable women, we'll be able to, look at them and go to from there. But yes, my name is Tahina Booth. I am a Papua New Guinean woman and also an Australian woman. I grew up in PNG, and this is essentially where my story starts. So from a very, very young age, and I might just add in there, just for a bit of trigger warning, I do talk about sexual violence as well. So if this is something that does is hard for you to listen to, come back in a couple of minutes time, or you might want to just to leave. So I grew up in Papua New Guinea, and I experienced sexual violence very, very young. And it was by somebody that, that was in my family. And it wasn't until I was, a little bit older, in high school, that I started to realize, things weren't exactly right, because straight after, the incident, I was told, if you tell anybody, we'll come for your whole family. And because this person was within my family, it's not like, I wasn't intimidated. They had direct access to me. And I think, for me at the time, I was very scared that they might do this to my sisters, and I didn't know if they did or if they didn't. I wasn't sure. But it wasn't until I was in high school that I started exhibiting, traits of somebody who was absolutely disengaged. I did terribly at school. I think, the best mark I ever got was probably like a B minus. And that really affected me because, I was harboring such a deep, ugly secret. And that really manifested into creating this person that just was not fully engaged with the world. I was pissed off, I was angry. I yeah, just wasn't really living my best life. And I attempted suicide quite young. And that's only because, I just didn't have the language or the skills, to speak out and to share, what really had happened to me. In this time of growing, I had a real keen sense of like I knew I was really good at sports, like a natural athlete, if you will. I had very explosive, just muscle, and also being Papua New Guinea, and this might be a little bit biased, but I do believe that we're like one of the strongest people in the world. And like I've recently just got back into the gym because my travel my routine's been just out for the last couple of years, and I'm trying to just get back to having a good healthy routine. But within like 2 weeks, sorry, I'm kind of digressing, but I'm just explaining how strong I am. So I went from not lifting like for ages, and I'm saying like, over 18 months, then to being able to squat quite easily, 140, 150, like for reps. So like, I don't know what that is in pounds. But it's just that we're just incredibly built, strong people. But anyway, I go back to my what I was speaking about before. Yeah, and then I realized, quite young that I was very talented. And it was through sport where I was really able to exercise this agency within myself to engage with society. I could run fast, I was, pretty strong, and I took a real liking to athletics. And it wasn't until we had moved to Australia in 93, I was about 9 at the time, 10, and they had organized little athletics competitions, which we didn't have in PNG. And I just thought, wow, this is amazing. And my dad would take, my sisters and myself, out to compete every single weekend, and we just loved it. It was from there where, I just loved running. I absolutely hated anything that was longer than 200 meters. I actually hated 200 meters at one point because, this big body. Like, I mean, if you look at me, I'm solid. I'm definitely not something dainty. And I just excelled. I think I really loved the competition. And, it was from there where I reclaimed my body back. It was a way for me to um, find that meek voice and for it to come to the forefront. It was a way where I could be friends with boys because, after the incident, I was scared of boys and men. And, this was a way for me to learn how to be friends with, other people. And so, yeah, sport really gave me a sense of me coming back into my identity, me
No,
reclaiming
exactly.
my voice and my power. And so, I really saw the value of sport very young thereafter, my first sexual assault. And it was through that I knew intrinsically I had to keep going with it. But with growing up, you kind of have to finish school. And then I sort of stopped sport for a little while, and for a couple of years was, kind of just I wouldn't even say existing. I was just kind of there, not really doing anything with my life. And it wasn't until I was about 25, 26, that I started to get like mental health help. Went into therapy, some very deep therapy for a couple of years because I was struggling just mentally. I was not well, doing very antisocial things to myself and just hanging out with the wrong people. And let's just say I wasn't really loving myself and giving myself the best opportunity. And, it's because,
You a question just for a second.
yeah.
Did you, at this time, did you feel that maybe you were the only person or one of a very, very few people that this kind of a thing would happen to? So did you feel sort of isolated in having had this experience? Would you say that was true?
Yeah, yes, because I didn't know anyone. I didn't know. I mean, well, it's not true that I didn't know anyone else because I had known some other girls, that had said something quite similar, but I was so ashamed that it had happened that I didn't want to, I didn't know how to talk about it. And the few times when I did try talk about it growing up, people either ignored me or they told me, don't bring that shame upon the family, or just pretended I never ever said it. So it was kind of like that other layer of complexity dealing with it, and that societal shame with it. So I kind of just, kept it inside, and but I knew deep down that it wasn't me. I didn't want to be that angry person or anything like that. But what helped me really get through with it is that I've always wanted to go to the Olympics, and always, always, always wanted to go to the Olympics, ever since when we moved to Australia and I saw Kathy Freeman run. Yeah, I was like, oh my goodness, she looks like my cousin. Like, if she can do it, I can do it. It literally was like that. But I was like, I'm not going for 400 meters. Oh my goodness, like I'm high. But yeah, and so I still had that in the back of my mind. And because I knew I was like, an exceptional athlete, was just waiting to like, come out of her shell. But I also knew that if I didn't address the mental health, challenges that I had, I would probably, end up killing myself, by the time I got to 30, because it was killing me. And so that's when I knew I had to check myself into, into therapy somewhat full time for a couple of years to really get to the core of all this, like, hate that I had in my soul. And yeah, I did that for a couple of years, and realized, at the end of the day, no one can save you but yourself. There is no one coming to save you. You need to get off your ass, and you've got to go and do the hard yards. And, that's essentially, what I did. I started making choices for myself. And when I started making those choices, I started talking about my story. And it was from my story that I started to realize, wow, I've still got so much healing to do. I have also realized, wow, there are so many women that have experienced sexual violence. And it wasn't until I was competing for Australia in powerlifting that I came back home to PNG, to see if I could qualify for Papua New Guinea to compete at the South Pacific Games. And during this process, like, think of me as I'm still going through all my, like, working through my mental health, in therapy somewhat full time. And I've now got the movement and the energy and the power to start really exercising my agency with my natural talents. And so I'm on this new journey. I'm by this stage, I'm 28 now. And I start powerlifting very early, like, in the piece. I actually got into powerlifting because I injured my playing NFL, but women's NFL in Sydney. And powerlifting, I'd never heard of the sport in my life. So for those of you that don't know what powerlifting is, it's essentially picking up really heavy weights off the ground. Like, I'm talking heavy ass weights, and just lifting them up, really. Yeah, if you don't do it right, it can be quite dangerous, and if you don't have the right training and all that sort of stuff. But I got addicted to it, because it was challenging, and it was just like, F the system. Like, and because I was surrounded by men in the gym all the time, I actually really enjoyed outlifting men. Like, I just thought it was hilarious. I mean, I don't know why. I think in a way it was kind of like a little way for me to I don't know, get back
Get back. Yeah,
or something.
absolutely.
I don't know what I was thinking, but I mean, even to this day, I still enjoy going into like if it's just all men and just like, outdoing them and not grunting or anything like that, and have some of them sound so stupid. But anyway, that's another story. Yeah, and so I got into I went back home to compete to get into the South Pacific Games, which is the South Pacific Games is our equivalent of the Olympics in the Pacific. And so that's also been one of my dreams to go and compete, for PNG in the Pacific Games because, it's a melting pot of all our different cultures, from Pacifica coming together. And it's not just about the winning the medals, it's you get to hear about everyone's song lines, about their culture, exchange stories. It really truly is beautiful, and that's one of the reasons, why I'm somewhat so desperate to go and compete. I don't want to go as an administrator, I want to go and compete and be part of that and have that in my blood. But yeah, so I was getting ready to trial for the South Pacific Games for PNG in powerlifting, and I was the only athlete amongst, the 30 or 40 competitors that were there that had all my gear. I was the only person that had the full suit, the shoes, the socks, the straps, like everything. And I was up against women who were incredibly strong, but unfortunately, some of them didn't get to qualify because they couldn't swap shoes and socks fast enough. And that broke me because, of the inequity and inequality when it came to sports. The message that sent to me was, this is only for the privileged. And that made me pissed off, really pissed off. And it was like there wasn't any leniency because they didn't fall into the rules. And I just thought that was bullshit. And so from there, I was like, okay, thinking cap on. This is such a simple change, like, like on the short term, but on the long term, this needs to look at a systems change. And, short term, I was like, well, let's just go and collect sports equipment and then, bring up to these athletes. And so that's essentially how Grassskirt Project was born. It was, from seeing what had happened there, from those women not being able to, compete for their village, for their country. I realized, yep, okay, I'm going to reach out to all my mates in Australia, that are athletes, professional athletes, semi-amateur, go to different, powerlifting clubs, Olympic weightlifting clubs, and ask them just to give me some, like, some gear for these girls. It turned out to be 18 months worth of bringing sports equipment to PNG, about 40 shipping containers worth. The value of this whole drive was around about 200,000 USD. It was incredible what was donated, over that 18-month period. And the corporate partnerships that I also developed, in that process. And it was through that movement that I saw the will of people from the international audience wanting to participate in this movement that I had started. And that really gave me a sense of, wow, this is really powerful and I need to move with this. I'm not too sure what this is, but, I need to move forward with this and start telling my story because, part of the anchoring, of the donations was that I told people, about who I am, what I'd experienced as a child, and, how sport was such a great equalizer, and that's what people bought into. And, I vowed to essentially, ensure that the equipment gets to the people that it needs to get to. And yeah, we had thousands and thousands of pieces of, sports equipment from specialized shoes to barbells. Someone had bought a brand new barbell set, like, Olympic weightlifting grade, like, donated that. Like, I, you just can't believe. And this is where I realized, yep, okay, I'm going to start, an organization. And my best mate, Dr. Sophia Bartlett, who's an epidemiologist, she came on board with me as well, and was like, designing the monitoring and evaluation part so that we could do data collection. Because one of the reasons is that I realized very early on that I couldn't find any sport for development programs that were PNG centric. And what I meant by that was, like, they didn't really work with the systems that were already working. And, being from Papua New Guinea, and seeing, foreigners come in, and try to employ their type of program, I thought, hmm, there hasn't been a level of co-design. What they're doing is not bad, but it doesn't really allow or enable local leadership, in the way that it should. And this is one of the reasons why, looking at Grass Skirt Project, we wanted to do things that actually mattered, that had genuine outcomes for the communities in which, Grass Skirt would be. And with any grass skirt program, we're invited in. We don't just go in and, say we're going to do this with your community, da da da. That's not how we work, because, PNG culture-wise, that's not how it works unless you're invited in. And so, from there, I realized, wow, we've now giving equipment to, so many thousand people. There's lots of women that are participating in sports. We realized, wow, we've got this now, a catalog of grassroots coaches, a database from around the whole country. And we would get pictures sent in from, like, some of the most remote places where, you can't get there by road. You'll either have to fly in there or, get in your canoe and go up the river, and, like, but if they've got Digicel coverage, they'll send pictures of what they've been doing with the equipment. And that really was, I was just like, shit, wow, this is unbelievable. Like, it really makes you look at a situation of, like, when you're going through some very hard times and thinking, what the F am I doing? Like, why can't I garner more support or more money or more resources? But I'd see pictures, of girls playing sports in, like, mud, but loving it, and in a community where women, might not be allowed to play sports. And so that to me was kick-ass and breaking the rules, but also too, it's like, it's her reclaiming her power, and it's not so much like let her play. She is playing. So yeah, that really just, pushed me on. And then, with Soph designing the monitoring and the data collection, the stories collection, we realized, very early on in the piece that we were kind of one of the only ones doing it this way, like, that we knew of. I'm sure that there are others, the sport for development world is, it's growing, which is fantastic. But in terms of our approach, it was different to how, your big international organizations, would do it. And so I've just, yeah, I mean, I've just been moving forward with it. And then, Early on in the piece, unfortunately, Soph got this big, razzle dazzle job over in Vancouver, and she relocated over there. And I felt for the first time, oh my goodness, I'm going to be doing this like, on my own. And it wasn't that I couldn't do it on my own. I was still battling with myself about my own leadership. And, it was like my comforter, my blanket had been ripped off. And, and Soph, like, she's such a champion. She was like, you'll be right. Like very Australian. I was like, girl, you're leaving me out here in the, like, to fend for myself. Oh my God. But I just had to put my big girl boots on and, just get back on that horse and just charge. And yeah, I haven't looked back since. And, she's one of like still to this day, like, my bestie and, strongest supporter. And any idea I have, like, always run it by her, or no matter how great or shit it is, she's always willing to listen and tell me if it's great or if it's a bit shit. So yeah. But yeah, from there, like Grassskirt Project essentially was now in full motion. And, behind that, I realized we have to do everything the PNG way, moving forward. So that's from the way that we run our programs, the way that we co-design, the way that we tell the stories. And at the end of the day, it's always going to be about sovereignty. And what I mean by that is, we're rich people, we own our land. The government does not own our land. And with that, we have to protect our stories, protect our culture, protect our land. And Grassskirt Project works within those realms as well. So it's, I feel like I'm digressing here, but what I want people to know is that I started Grassskirt Project from a very individual, like if you're looking at the, ecological, like, framework, like I started this from a very personal story. And what I've realized through this growth is that I'm using sport to change systems. And what I like, I want to paint a picture. Like if you think of it like three canoes navigating one ocean under the Pacific constellation of stars. The first canoe is the Grassskirt Project, which is about gender justice, having teaching young people leadership, programs through sports. And it's where like the power begins. Then the next canoe is Ma Sports Diplomacy, which is a sports diplomacy where this is where Jimmy will come in with his social return on investment modeling with Dr. Alex, providing services to corporate entities through, ESG reporting. And this has been born out of those programs that we've had, with Grassskirt Project. And then the last canoe, which I've realized over the years, I need to be doing more speaking, more keynote addresses, speaking to policy, and that's my consultancy. And so when we look at the whole system, of sport, what we've been doing in Papua New Guinea has been always been about changing the system in which young people are seen, how people are heard, and also like, how we can create new policy or change, current policies to enable women's leadership, and like in our parliament right now, we've got 111 seats and we've got 3 women in parliament. Like that's not good enough at all. We shouldn't have cases of like, 2 out of 3 women experiencing sexual violence in 1 year. 100% of women will experience violence in her lifetime, whether it's sexual or domestic, from someone she knows. That's not okay. We have young girls and boys dropping out, about 80% drop out by year 9. That's not okay. These statistics, they all compound, compound. 60% of our people are under the age of 25. It's crazy. So we've got this growing population that are not educated, don't have access to health, don't know what their rights are, having children, and the government can't keep up. We've got political instability left, right, and center. Access to hospitals is woeful. Like, women die giving birth. It's just terrible. And so where you have like war setting, like for example, I was just in Tari in Hela province delivering a pilot for Sport for Peace. A lot of the kids that were in that pilot hadn't been to school in 2 years because of the tribal fighting was so bad. 2 years it was shut. And this is the reality of Papua New Guinea. It's a very, very, very hard place to live if you are a young person, if you are a woman, if you're a child. And you can't just walk freely, anywhere unless you're within your village, So it's a very hard place. And when you've got these types of realities, it requires an Indigenous approach. It requires people to lead within, not outside to come in to lead and to lead. These issues are just yes, it's very difficult, especially like if you think if you're a 12-year-old girl who's got a disability, her experiences are going to be different to a 12-year-old boy, with the same, because he'll be treated differently. It's just a very hard place. But then again, it's incredibly beautiful. We have so many beautiful people that are willing to help, and we make it work. There's many ways to skin a cat, as they say. But yeah, so
I'm interested. I want to ask you a question about the sovereignty principle that you mentioned. Is that difficult to try to introduce and maintain? Do you find people sort of like trying to escape from that? Not your people, but the other folks that you're trying to engage.
I think it's kind of new, like when people hear about that, because that's like, for example, that's not a term that you would hear anyone in sport for development, say. But for the work that we're doing, the reason why we say this is because it's a reminder to our people that they are sovereign people. Like, you were born with your land, and if you look across the ocean and you come to Australia, the First Nations people, their land was taken from them, and the way that has happened to them is a genocide. And so it's a reminder, that we need to protect, but that also is a reminder that you need to know who you are and where your roots are and what your history is and where your culture is. and how you identify, because we've got a lot of young people who don't know where they're from. And this is actually a bit of a compounding thing, from colonization. And so we're actually this year celebrating 50 years of independence. But, I sometimes think I'm not too sure what we're celebrating because we've got so much death happening and, so much political instability. And, we've kind of forgotten the power of what culture is, and as an example, something that we have in PNG is our governing institutions. So before the colonizers came through, we had these institutions called within our house line, like our I'm having an absolute brain blank right now. I can't believe I can't even remember what I was going to say. It's like our house motto and our house Mary, where these are institutions that are guided so that our men can go to the house motto, our women to their house Mary, to talk about whether it's life, death, initiation, conflict resolution, to talk about love. It was about everything. These were the institutions that really guided us to enable that type of dialogue. And so if you want to think of it as therapy, like modern day therapy or something like that, very similar. And that was widely practiced everywhere because you needed that peace and harmony within, and we don't have that anymore. Those institutions are no longer there, and what's replaced it is religion. And with religion, people can make up anything that they want. It's about, at the end of the day, there's if people can exert some type of control, and that brings power, people will, because that's just human nature. And so what we're doing essentially through all our sports, and sports programs is bringing back the house man and house Mary, and doing it in a culturally acceptable way, and getting young people, it's not just young people, it's actually the whole community, depending on who, visits what program, but for them to come together and just share, and build those relationships and those kin within. And that's something that, we're super proud of because that is part of sovereign identity. It's reclaiming yourself, and the space and the area that you're in. And part of our programs and something that we're about to launch is our next pilot for the 10 Million Strong program, which is a leadership program, is involving elements of our constitution, like our preamble, and having young people read it. Because our constitution, if you ever get the chance, the PNG constitution is absolutely beautifully written. It is so beautiful. It's poetic. It's, and I mean, I should post it up on my LinkedIn for people to read. And but a lot of the youth would have never ever seen it. And they would not know our history. And especially if you're leaving school by the time you reach grade 9, or and for a lot of girls, grade 6, that's not taught. So you've got a lot of young people who want to do something with their lives, but they're in a bit of a, I don't know, in between. They're not yet grown up, but they're too, but they are at the same time. And so through our programs, we want to bring back, culture and the practice of, but also, the education of, know who you are, and know that you absolutely matter and that you are the one with the power. We're not here to empower you. You are already empowered. You've already got it. We're just really providing a platform for you to step out. That's it. So Yeah, I'm sure you've got some questions.
I have a few questions. Kind of as I'm listening to your talk, I was going through the website of the Grass Court Project. I guess I have a few questions that so like it seems like you're doing, like you or like this group is doing like few project on like 10 million strong or like the research on social return with casual latest anyway. So like and you're doing 10 million strong with people at the Texas University. Like, how did you make these happen? I think these sometimes people have these great ideas, but then like I think you seems like being very successful connecting people who are supporting your idea and then kind of getting those researchers and other centers involved. Can you talk about that part?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, well, it was so I guess before I want to, answer that question into full detail, I want people to understand that I'm a very systems-based thinker. And, when you're systems based, based, you always look at the bigger picture, and what I can see on the reality was a lot of these very big organizations with incredibly big budgets running sports programs that, in my opinion, short answer were shit. More diplomatic answer, they needed more co-design. They needed more opportunity where Indigenous people could really say what it is that they wanted and what metrics were important to them. And, there wasn't really an understanding of the place in which they were working. And as an example, I won't, name the agency, but, they had a fairly large budget and it was meant to be a rugby program for the community and talking about gender equality and all that type of stuff. And they had like 6, 7 guys and the rest were girls. And there was nothing wrong with having lots of girls there, but they completely missed the mark because when we look, at gender equality, you've got to work with the boys and the men, because they're the ones, at the end of the day, the statistics tell us that are doing majority of the perpetrating, so we've got to work with them, not against them. And, to me, I just thought, wow, that program design could absolutely improve. And we need to look at different ways on how we're designing these programs to engage more men and boys, in violence prevention, because that's what a lot of these sports programs from international donors are doing. And so looking at the whole system, I realized, okay, I can't, what I can do is go share my story with the best in the world, So I went and found out that Dr. Dr. Shannon Spriggs Murdoch was working in partnership with Dr. Jackson Katz, through bystander intervention. And very good friend of mine, and also, one of our researchers as well, Sinead Dalsgaard, she said, yep, we need to go and have a chat, to Dr. Spriggs Murdoch and just, see if she's willing to work with us to see how we can put together a PNG-based bystander intervention program, because we'd seen that she had done something in Australia through Griffith University, and I really liked the program, but I knew that I was like, we can't run that in PNG because it just won't translate in a few things. But however, there are a lot of modules in here that create space. And so we'll take what they've done and essentially remodel it for our people and we did that with Dr. Shannon, which was great, and also Joshua Jasper as well. And that 1 day, 2 day program that she would run in other communities for our people, we had to break it down in a way that would be palatable and for people to understand, and to really have it digest. For PNG, that turned out to be an 11-week program, because there's no way that we could deliver that in 1 day and then be like, oh, that's done, good luck. No. And and we know, like, globally, like, human it changing behavior and attitudes takes time. And so for our people, it was really interesting, running this program the first time. We had lots of learnings from it, but also the successes that had come from it and the changes that we had seen. And, there's a few stories that I would like to share, like, in terms of those changes. We had, one young guy who was about 15 years old and fairly antisocial, behavior, which is not uncommon for, 15-year-old boys who've got a bit of angst, or, um, they just want to be seen and heard and loved, really. At the end of the day, that's all it is. But, in his application, he was very strongly worded that, if he was to be married, that he absolutely, has the last say. His wife would have to listen to him on every decision. She would not be able to, wear whatever she wants. Like, he has to, like, he saw that as his right. And this is at 15, that she just couldn't go anywhere without him, like, and he would have to accompany her, and that's also for a bit of security. But however, there were some very, like, strongly held, ingrained attitudes towards, like, women's visibility, and her having her own agency. And he went through the program over the 11 weeks, and he had stopped for a week or two because he felt that it was a bit too much for him, or he ended up saying that he was ashamed of his behavior because he had realized that he needed to change, but he didn't know how to articulate it. And he ended up coming back because there were other boys within the program that encouraged him to come back. And so he finished the program, and towards the end, there was a girl that got up and shared her stories of seeing abuse in her family, but not being able to speak about it openly. And he held space for her and allowed himself to just listen and not tell her off, or belittle her, and just apologized and said, we all need to do better to protect our sisters. And this is something that is so important because we don't have those spaces for young people. Like, when I was talking about our, like, our house lines and House Smart and House Mary, this is a form of that, House Smart and House Mary, but, together, where people can openly speak about, issues and support one another, and I think that's something that that this young man really appreciated, and he was able to find space where not only could he contribute, but because it's a peer-to-peer, they're all learning together that this is okay. It's not a sign of weakness, that it's actually very healthy to support one another. But yeah, he's actually gone on to start many other projects with other people, which is so encouraging to hear, because that's exactly what we want to see, is that they're building community within each other and supporting one another. And so, part of the 10 Million Strong program, Dr. Shannon, worked with us over the course of 24 months to put this together, for us to roll our pilot out. And I'm more than happy to share our pilot results with everybody. And we're actually now in the process. We're about to sign a contract with Asian Development Bank to roll out our second pilot of our 10 million strong with our gym box program, which is another program that we have that works in partnership. And what the gym box is, it's a shipping container, a 20-foot shipping container that's been converted into a functional gym. And the reason for this is that we knew if we're going to engage men and boys in discussions around, equity and inequality and GBV and all of that, we need to have something that is of value to them. And there are many gaps in PNG when it comes to providing access to infrastructure, like such as gyms. They're non-existent. And, we've done a lot of research to see, how are people exercising, in villages or, settlements or wherever they are. And there's a lot of homemade gyms that people will just, whether it's concrete or, anything really. I've seen people pick up, car axle bars and like lift them, so people are very in like whatever they can find to exercise with, they will. And so that gave us the idea, well, why don't we just take, a shipping container, put some functional gym equipment inside and run our, leadership programs through it. And so that's how, the gym box and the 10 million strong, they work together. And so, yeah, like I was saying before, we're about to sign a partnership with Asian Development Bank to scale out our gym box programs.
I have to say, when Tahina first told me about the gym box, I just had this incredible vision all around the world in Asia, in Africa, whatever far off place you could find, there'd be little gym boxes everywhere. And I'm sure you're going to wind up with gym boxes everywhere. It'll be great.
Yeah, well, we will. So we've got a bit of a plan to have by 2032, we would like at least 15 gym boxes that are operational. So that will help our athletes that are trying to get to the 2032 Olympic Games in Brisbane. And it's not just about, building athletes. At the end of the day, it's about, building better people, people that absolutely want to, be leaders. And, sport is a great way to bring that leadership out in people. So that's the goal for gym box. But yeah, where we are putting these gym boxes are in schools and churches. And the reason for that is that they're neutral ground. And what I mean by neutral ground is that because of how PNG is with our villages and like clan lines, like I said, the government doesn't own our land. There's government land, for places, but when it comes to that sovereignty, the people own their land. And so, with the gym box locations, what we've found is that it's always best to have it on neutral ground, which is your schools and churches. So that's where they'll operate. And that's also where our key target markets are, with young people. And how the gym box and the 10MS work is we work with the school teachers and also the local coaches within the community. We also work with, church leaders as well, because we need to create a very supportive network for these young people and, working with the ecosystem that is around them. And, it's all about the capacity building and, yeah, it's an interesting, very interesting model. Like we're also in the process of having the gym monetizing its services as well. So there's an economic like model there, which will really roll out in Q3 next year when we start to scale out with this Asian Development Bank partnership that we've got.
That sounds awesome. I would like to find out more about the gym box, but so seems like you uh, make a partnership with the community. So like, because I was just curious about how do you do like maintenance and stuff like that? You know, like you can put the gym box, around PNG, but then like maintaining equipment, like teaching how to use it, like there's a lot more to do that, right? So I was curious
Yeah.
about how to do it. Yeah.
Yes, there is absolutely. We have a lot of policies around what that looks like. And we work with the school to teach them how to utilize the gym and also bring in the local coaches within the community as well, to show them how it works. Because when the gym is not in use, the school can do whatever it wants with the gym because it's their gym at the end of the day. The only thing that we request is that we have access to it to run our leadership programs in partnership with the school. And so when it's not in used during school times, the school, it's up to the school how they can hire it out to local teams, they can do whatever it is that they want, and that's up to the school and the local teams that hire it out. Everybody wants to have it protected, so in terms of the maintenance, part of the contract that they would have with Grassgate Project is there would be, a set amount of money set aside, so if they need to upgrade their equipment or if it needs whatever it is, there is cash there for them to do that. And also, keep in mind that the schools are the ones where if extra things are needed and that's not covered, in the contract that they've got with us, there's ways for them to go and get it as well. So we'll know when we start scaling out into the outer provinces, which we haven't got the gyms like, out there just yet, because we're at the beginning of this scale out. We'll start collecting, more data and to see, what does that look like when it's run in these remote areas. But as an example, we had one community, say to us that if we were to have it up in Tari and Hela province, where there's, clan wars happening, that what we should do with that gym box is put a water container, like a water tank, sorry. And the reason for that is that they experience drought. And so, if you have that water tank connected to the gym, it will be protected. So that's another way of, keeping it safe and also ensuring that, it's not going to be put ablaze, and that's, in that area too. So it's working with the community to see how we can make it sustainable, how we can keep, the asset protected, but also, providing that space even in times of war, that it can still be used by the community, so it's, yes, it's a lot of asking these questions, but also, giving space for other people's ideas to come in. So yeah, I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah. No, I definitely, yes. So, well, so Carol and I have been kind of like interacting with Tahina, but for audience here, please feel free to kind of unmute yourself and, you know, share your thoughts, ask questions. Feel free to do that as well.
Yeah, we don't know who else is here.
Actually, I don't know if Lynn Anderson, if this is the Lynn Anderson, my good friend, former Bulldog CEO and Australian Paralympic Committee. Are you on there, Lynn? I don't know, maybe not.
Is it muted?
Yeah. Miss Linda Anderson is here. Yeah. Oh, I can't hear. We can hear somehow. It's unmuted though.
Yeah, no, I think where I've been taking, Grassgate Project, it really is just this journey of, looking at the whole system and seeing how we can absolutely disrupt it, how we can do things differently. And, one of the other projects I'm working on at the moment is looking at drafting a sports diplomacy brief, for PNG. And this is something that I absolutely would love to see, for PNG, and also to see how we tie in our Grand Chiefs, he's now passed away, Michael Samari, his vision of what PNG, should be looking like. And I'm working with some very powerful women, including his daughter, that is looking at drafting this. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, we just all want to live peacefully and participate equally. And sport is one of those things where we absolutely can achieve our, national goals and contribute to, nation building. So, I guess I'm working on a few different things. And, now that I feel like so like super duper strong and really happy with the direction that I'm going in. But yeah, and also I'll be heading to the UK. And if there's anybody in the UK that would like to meet with me, I would absolutely love that. I'm going to reach out to the ladies at IWG, because I will, want to meet with them, and also see if I can go meet with the Olympic Committee in Lausanne. So yeah, if there's anyone on here that's listening.
That is I was gonna suggest. So the Women's Sports International is one of the board member for IWG. So I think we know, I'm know personally a few people at IWG, but I think that's definitely the people who you should visit. But do you also know about like the conferences that they're that World Global Summit that they're going to be hosting in July 2026?
Yes, I want to go and speak at that. So I'm
Yes, that
into
would
the
be awesome.
universe. I want them to fly me there,
Yeah.
and I want to present.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah,
more people.
we're working on that one. We're working on that one. The
Yes.
other thing too, I would suggest, LA has the 2028 games,
Mm.
and when you're visiting with Lausanne and all these people, the game structure disappears after the games are over, but it would be good to build that now, make some kind of connection with the LA people. That's
Yes,
my
no.
that's my home base too. So this is why I'm thinking about that.
Yes, no, absolutely. I want to be speaking more on global stages, and sharing the work that we're doing. And yeah, because I mean, there's just so many good people doing great things, in PNG. I'm really trying to build that ecosystem here, and at the moment, there's been a few of us that have been talking about having a Pacifica sports, like, women's leadership, like, summit. So yeah, there's a few of us, that are doing some really great things, and
Dreamers.
we're coming together. Yeah. So I must admit, in the last 12 months, I've just started to meet some absolute amazing people. Yeah, Wahine that just whether it's grassroots or they're working for like, FIFA, or if they're, Rugby Australia or whatever, they're really trying to get things in their home bases, up and running so that there is a collective, of women that are like, and we're ready. We're so ready to lead. Like we are leading.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love you to share this story to more like a, global stage. But I see one question here in the chat. The Antoinette. So hi Tahina, Antoniette from Solomon Islands. As a fellow, oh gosh, Melanesian, I can relate with a lot of, well, Antoinette, if you can unmute and then speak, that might be better. Or do you want me to read the chat?
I I'm happy to read it out.
Yeah. Hold on. I don't know if
Did this
anyway, yeah. So she said, like, so I can relate a lot of things you have experienced and shared. I'm curious about some of the challenges you've faced with your initial consultation with the remote communities and how they have come to accept your work within your community.
Okay. Thank you, Antoinette. Yes, so with as you know, with our cultures, you can't just go into a community. You need to be invited into the community, and that's how we do it, and so like the way that it's organically grown in a way where, for example, we have a program called the Havea Cup and Wellness Expo. And sorry, this is another program that we have. And so the Havea Cup and Wellness Expo is a rugby league nines tournament for men and women. And in the last Havea Cup, we also had younger players come through, so that were in high school. So they're in grade 9, and they played rugby league tag. And running alongside the rugby tournament is we have a very large scale wellness expo. And this has we had doctors and nurses, doing all different types of, diabetes talks to testing. We had Murray Stopes doing sexual and reproductive health clinics. They were able to offer women contraceptive alternatives, whether they wanted to have the implant on, or if they were, curious about, other types of contraceptives. We had the blood bank come. So if you wanted to donate blood, you could do that. And family sexual violence units there so that you could get more information if you wanted to learn how to, protect yourself by going to court, finding out how to, prosecute, like all these different partnerships. And so it's through our Havea Cups and Wellness Expos that we get thousands and thousands of people come to that. And because we have, that tournament, that also opens up the gateway for people to invite us to come to their community. And, when they realize that, Grass Skirt Project is not just a rugby league part, carnival, they see these other programs that we have. And so that's how we get invited into communities. And it's from there that we find out, like, who the leaders are that we need to be working with, and whether we're the right fit for that community as well. So it's definitely a two-way street, because at the end of the day, we need to ensure that whatever community we go into, that the people, the leaders, of that community absolutely understand what we're about, and that we will always have women at the forefront leading. And, if that is a problem, then, we make the decision, either not to go or to go. It just depends because we've always got to ensure that our women that are in our leadership positions are always safe and protected, and that they're not second guessed. So that's another level of safeguarding on our end. Um, and but another way, is that we get to note those areas of, being areas where we would like to go in the future. But we need to do more like, leadership training and gender training, with those leaders, which we haven't had a problem with, yet or anything like that, because a lot of the people that come to, Havea Cup, they know what Grassgirl Project is all about, and they want to be part of that growth. They want to be part of that movement. And yeah, it's our job to to work with them. But with a lot of the things that we do, because because I've been so trailblazing, to be honest, it's been hard having core funding, like really difficult. And when you don't fit into the mold of what the donor's metrics are, it's been difficult to get that government funding. Um, and every time I've spoken to different, like, PNG, PNG, ministers, or it's either I've come too late or too early, or budget hasn't been done, or or I get promised money and then it never comes through. Like, yeah, it's pretty hard. And I haven't really had any traction from, Australia or anything like that. So it's been very difficult. But we have had, I mean, believe it or not, we have had like, pretty good funding come from the UK government, which has been fantastic. So yeah, they essentially really helped us, get our 10 million strong program, up and running. And it's been corporates like the Sir Brian Bell Foundation, who has been with us, since 2019. They absolutely believe in everything that we're doing. And, in terms of, like, ESG, they know that people that go through our programs, come out to be like, young leaders, and they're the types of people that they want to employ in their organization, that know how to work in teams, that know how to deal with conflict resolution, and also show empathy. So these are traits that that companies, want in their organization. And our partners like the Sir Brian Bell Foundation, they know that that's what they're paying for at the end of the day. Yeah, so Antoinette, I hope that's I hope I've explained that to you. And then I also see another message from my dear friend Lynn. Apologies if I missed this earlier, as I was late, but have you been involved with the NRL license? No, not such. It's a bit of a delicate situation. Like, so how it works in PNG, is that I've been told that there's a $250 million community budget. And back in March this year, March, April, they DFAT, the Pacific Sports Diplomacy, did a round of consultations around the Pacific. And I was part of that consultation. And that's all I know so far. I don't really know, what else is happening, or but yeah, I mean, my gut feel with all of that is that they'll probably just, continue funding a lot of the programs that they have, which, if you read their last report on their, like, through their Team Up program, again, they missed the mark on women's leadership, so which means that they need to do things differently. And one of the issues that DFAT have is that they've got all these programs that they're funding, in silos. And so essentially what I'd love to see, and what would be fantastic, is if they were to work with me and a lot of my friends, we would be able to not only not work in silos, but combine a lot of these investments around, you know, because there are definitely ways that we can do that and, report on the same things and not have to waste money. Because I'm sure the Australian taxpayer absolutely wants the best bang for their buck. And, there are ways around it, but it just requires, DFAT understanding, what wahine are out there and, and what we're doing and, getting us all together to see how we can all work together. But, in terms of the NRL, yeah, absolutely. You guys need to come and speak to me because, I'm doing the work that you wish you could do and, are doing it better, in the different areas because we've got so many young leaders on the ground that, are doing great things. And so there are systems in place that, we can work with to enhance to get genuine, and better outcomes. So yeah. So Lynn, I hope that answers your question. And maybe Auntie, you can sort something out, hey, because I know you know a lot of powerful people. And yeah, get me in front of them. Happy to talk. I'm actually going to be down in Canberra, September 1st and 2nd. So, if you're down that way, I'd love to catch up for a coffee or yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, you can hear me now.
Yes.
Tahina, have you got me?
Yes, hi Lynn.
As I put on there, clearly not young, so not real good on the IT. And the one thing I miss, I'm in semi-working mode. I don't have the IT man in the next room. so, so I'm on my own, but I worked that out. That's pretty cool. Yeah, the reason I asked for Tahina, I'm back in Rugby League World. So I was the chair of the Bulldogs, and the chair before me will be the chair of the NRL license up there, which is going to be interesting. But I'm in chair of a company called League Ahead, which delivers wellbeing and education. Now, I'm only focusing on the elite athletes for both men and women, so not pathways and not any further down into the community. But I agree with you. I think that the core for this kind of thing is as much at Canberra level in DFAT. I don't have a lot of links in DFAT, but I still am on the sports commission, so I might just make a few calls. Unfortunately, I won't be down there when you are. I'm off to the US for a study tour. Never too old to learn. But yeah, let me just put some thinking there because I'm thinking exactly the same. Like we had Marcus Bauer is a good friend because he played with my husband in Storm, and we were still having a chat to him. And I mean, these programs are amazing, which they always were back in the days when I first met you. But there is a great opportunity. We just want to how to get it, and it probably is the DFAT. All right.
Yeah, no, that would be
questions, huh?
amazing.
Yeah.
That would be amazing, and this is so funny. Like, actually, I first met Lynn. What was it? I can't even remember. It was like
I think I reached out when you had your beautiful The Orchids, the movie you put out.
Oh, was it?
And there was the launch of the movie, I think. And I fell in love with what you're trying to do with that then. It's
Yeah,
2017, 2018 or something.
I can't remember, 2018, yeah. Well, yeah, my husband's in that movie. He's actually, and I probably should share that movie, yeah, Power Mary. It gives a really,
Absolutely.
yeah, a very you get to experience, and see what it's like, for a woman coming into that sport. Because yeah, and for the listeners out there, 2017 was the year that PNG fielded the first rugby league team, women's team, that is. And so groundbreaking, so like incredibly powerful. Yeah, and my husband, he's the coach on that film there, so you'll get to see what a very nurturing, beautiful man he is. But yeah, so I should share that with the group. But yeah, no.
Maybe you could post how to link up with that later.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is that? What is the name of that movie?
Power Mary. Now, I don't know if they've got it well, PAWAMERI.
An official launch at the Dendy Cinema in, I think it was, I can't remember.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it was so great. Yeah.
Awesome. I think that we'll check it out definitely. All right. Well,
running
no,
down our time here.
it is running out of time. I know we can definitely keep asking different questions to find out more about, like this project. Like, I was skimming through their website and just like so much in there that I was just like,
I know.
wow, wow,
Yeah.
So it's an awesome project they've been doing. But just to close this webinar, I would like to number one, thank you for Tahina for taking your time early morning to speak for us. So thank you so much. And it's very, very, very interesting and powerful things that you're doing. And then we love
I think that we
all
can
this,
really,
yes,
I think we can really encourage the IWG to
yes,
make sure that Tahina is on the program
yes.
and sharing the information about what they do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. IWG conferences every 4 years happening. Once every 4 years happening about focusing on women in sports, and people are coming from all over the world. And when I was super young, it was my eye-opening experience to attend that event. It was very very inspiring event. So definitely, I think it's when you go to UK, you reach out to IWG. And then definitely get them on that global summit. It will be very, and then many of us in WSI are going to be attending there too. So maybe we get to see each other in person.
We absolutely will. We'll just put it out to the universe, make it happen, make it rain. Yes.
Yes, we will. We will. Well, thank you. Thank you again so much. So I will share this information in the chat as well. And again, thank you so much, Ahina, to sharing your journey and story. And we really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm super duper, I feel so honored and privileged every time I get to talk about, GSP and the work that we're doing. But yeah, so my goal for me is to get out, speak globally, just make a point that, women absolutely need to be part of history and not to be erased and to contribute. And sport is a really great way to do that. So thank you.